British jazz during the 1960s through to the early 70s underwent a profound transformation. Modern British jazz, which began really just after the war in the late 40s, largely copied American jazz, which is fair enough. Most jazz players in Europe did copy the American greats. But by the early to mid 60s, British and British-based composers and musicians realized that simply copying the styles of the Americans wasn't enough. They had to bring their own identity and flavor to it. So composers like Michael Garrick and Ian Carr and Stan Tracy started to address the music from a slightly different perspective. Michael Garrick, the great composer and pianist, told me that, he's from Enfield. He wasn't from Chicago. So there was no point in him trying to write like someone from America. He wrote from someone who came from England. So he started to infuse elements of British folk music, even church music, into his music to create a very distinctive sound. Another artist like Stan Tracy on his very famous landmark album, Under Milk Wood, used British themes of poetry and artistry and creativity to kind of encapsulate a new feeling that was happening at the time. And I think the music created in that period was moving away from a strictly American model to a much more distinctive British sound. And even musicians like Joe Harriott from the West Indies, who was based in Britain, he basically created the European free jazz movement, free improvisation, around the same time as Ornette Coleman was doing it in America, but completely independently, unknowingly. He didn't know what Coleman was doing at that time, and nor did Coleman knew what Joe Harriott was doing. So there's been a big reappraisal in the last 20 odd years about that period of music. Most of those records that came out in the 60s and early 70s were not reissued for a long, long time. So they became very collectible, very rare, and sadly quite expensive to find.